Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most talked about weapons of the modern era, Russia's nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed cruise missile, often referred to by its NATO codename, Skyfall. For years, it has been surrounded by mystery, speculation, and fear-driven headlines, but the truth is far more complex. Despite the drama and hype, nobody is genuinely scared of this missile, and today we're breaking down exactly why. We're going to walk through what the missile is supposed to be, what Russia claims it can do, why the rest of the world isn't panicking, and what the real issues are behind the scenes. As always, we're keeping the paragraphs short, the explanations clean, and the tone straightforward, so you can get the full picture without the noise. The story of Skyfall begins with a very bold idea, a cruise missile powered by a miniature nuclear reactor. Instead of burning fuel, it would use nuclear power to fly at extremely low altitudes for an almost unlimited range, making it theoretically capable of circling the globe and evading missile defenses. On paper, that sounds terrifying. A missile that never needs to refuel, can fly unpredictable routes, and carries a nuclear warhead sounds like something out of a science fiction nightmare. Russia positioned this weapon as a technological leap beyond anything the United States or NATO could build, presenting it as a revolutionary strategic tool designed to restore fear and respect. But as with many bold claims, the reality is far less impressive than the pitch. The first reason nobody is frightened of Skyfall is simple. It has never actually worked. For years, Russia has tested prototypes, and for years, the tests have ended in failure. Reports indicate that the missile has never even come close to functioning as advertised. Many of the tests ended with the missile crashing shortly after takeoff, losing control, or never activating its nuclear propulsion system at all. A weapon that cannot reliably fly is not a weapon that scares military planners. Even more revealing is the secrecy surrounding the tests. Russia has tried to shroud the program in mystery, but every major missile program leaves signals, satellite imagery, reports of search and recovery operations, and accidental events that cannot be hidden. One of the most significant events occurred in 2019 when an explosion during what was believed to be a Skyfall-related test killed several nuclear engineers and released radiation into the surrounding area. Instead of showcasing power, the accident highlighted just how unstable and risky the missile was to Russia's own personnel. This brings us to one of the biggest problems with the concept itself. A nuclear-powered cruise missile is inherently dangerous even before you attach a warhead. Conventional cruise missiles burn fuel, run out, and crash, allowing predictable and manageable outcomes during testing. A nuclear-powered missile, however, risks scattering radioactive material every time something goes wrong. That means a failed test is not simply an embarrassment, it's a nuclear contamination event. No country wants that, and Russia has already suffered consequences from its attempts. Because of these failures and risks, military experts do not view Skyfall as an operational weapon. Instead, it is treated like a political showpiece meant to signal technological ambition rather than battlefield capability. The United States, NATO, and independent analysts have consistently stated that Skyfall is nowhere near deployment and may never become a functioning system. If a weapon cannot be deployed, cannot be trusted, and cannot be produced safely, it cannot intimidate anyone. Another major reason no one is worried about Skyfall is the existence of far more important nuclear weapons. Russia already possesses thousands of nuclear warheads and highly reliable missiles capable of striking any point on Earth. From intercontinental ballistic missiles to submarine-launched missiles, Russia's existing arsenal already ensures nuclear deterrence. Skyfall adds nothing meaningful to that equation. When you already have hundreds of missiles that can destroy a city, a malfunctioning experimental device does not change the strategic balance at all. It also matters that missile defense systems around the world are not designed to stop an all-out nuclear strike. The idea that Skyfall's unpredictable flight path would allow it to bypass defenses ignores the fact that nuclear deterrence is not based on interception. It's based on the understanding that no one survives a nuclear war. Whether a missile flies low, high, fast, or slow is almost irrelevant when the fear is mutual destruction. Skyfall does not introduce a new strategic fear because that fear already exists with existing missile systems. Beyond performance issues, the concept of a nuclear-powered cruise missile raises environmental and political problems. Even during perfect operation, such a missile would trail radioactive exhaust across every region it flew over. It would contaminate air, water, and land during test flights. It would risk spreading nuclear materials across the entire planet. No country wants a radioactive missile flying over its territory, whether it's armed or not, and such a weapon would violate numerous treaties and norms. The world's lack of fear comes not from underestimating Russia, but from recognizing that Skyfall is impractical, unsafe, and politically toxic. Russia, however, continues to promote the missile for domestic reasons. In times of economic pressure or political uncertainty, military announcements help project strength to internal audiences. Claiming a revolutionary new weapon creates the appearance of technological superiority. But other countries evaluate weapons based on proven performance, not propaganda. And Skyfall simply has not proven anything yet. It's also important to understand the broader context of Russian weapons development. Russia has successfully built powerful missile systems like the S-400, the S-500, and multiple generations of long-range nukes. But even a capable military produces ambitious projects that fail. Every major power has had experimental weapons that never reached maturity. The United States, for example, abandoned numerous hypersonic and space-based weapons after decades of research. The difference is that Russia publicly promotes Skyfall as a game changer while the world sees it as a struggling experiment. A major factor that limits global concern is technological feasibility. Creating a nuclear reactor small enough, stable enough, and safe enough to power a missile is an engineering challenge that borders on impossible with current materials and physics. Reactors need cooling, shielding, and precise control systems. Shrinking all of that into a missile-sized package without risking meltdown, contamination, or instability is extraordinarily difficult. Even if Russia could build such a reactor, launching it repeatedly would still pose major risks. The concept seems more like a Cold War relic than a realistic modern weapon. Another signal that the world isn't alarmed comes from defense spending and planning. When militaries feel genuinely threatened by a new weapon, they respond. They develop new defenses, shift budgets, run simulations, and prepare contingencies. None of that has happened with Skyfall. No NATO reports list it as a high-priority concern. No defense contractor has been commissioned to build countermeasures. No nation has announced policy changes based on it. That silence speaks louder than any headline. In fact, Skyfall may be more dangerous to Russia than to its adversaries. Every failed test risks radiation, leaks, death, and long-term contamination. Each attempt to perfect the missile could trigger another accident. Scientists involved in the program face enormous pressure, limited resources, and hazardous working conditions. The missile's development reflects more desperation than dominance, suggesting that Russia wants to appear ahead of its rivals, even if it means pursuing unrealistic designs. Let's also consider the historical comparison that Russia might be inspired by. Project Pluto, an American program from the 1960s that attempted to develop a nuclear-powered ramjet missile. Pluto never flew because officials realized exactly what the world now realizes about Skyfall. A radioactive missile is too dangerous to test, too risky to deploy, and too unpredictable to control. If a similar program failed with massive Cold War funding and American industrial capacity, it's no surprise that Russia struggles even more today. For all these reasons, global military analysts treat Russia's Skyfall missile not as a terrifying breakthrough, but as a symbolic gesture, a way to claim scientific daring without delivering practical results, a way to remind the world that Russia is still trying to innovate, even if the innovations remain theoretical. The missile is discussed in think tanks more as a curiosity than a threat, a reminder of how far nations will go to appear technologically formidable even when the execution falls short. The lack of fear also comes from transparency. Satellites, sensors, and open-source intelligence give analysts unprecedented visibility into weapons development. When Russia moves equipment, launches a test, or conducts cleanup operations after a crash, the world sees it. That visibility eliminates the possibility of secret breakthroughs. If Skyfall had made significant progress, evidence would exist. Instead, the evidence points toward repeated failures and stalled development. There is also the geopolitical angle. Russia's relationship with NATO is tense, but its economic constraints limit its ability to fund long-term, high-risk projects. Skyfall requires an enormous investment in nuclear engineering, precision manufacturing, and testing infrastructure. Sanctions and budget pressures make it difficult to sustain such a program. When countries face economic strain, they prioritize reliable weapons over experimental ones. Skyfall sits low on that priority list, so why do headlines continue to bring it up? One reason is that the concept of a nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed missile is dramatic. It captures the imagination, fuels speculation, and attracts attention. But attention is not fear. Analysts focus on the sensational nature of the idea, not because they think it will reshape global warfare, but because it highlights the extremes of weapons experimentation. Skyfall makes for compelling conversation, even if it poses little actual danger. Another reason is that Russia itself periodically brings up the weapon in official statements. These comments are designed to craft an image of resilience and power. But repeating a claim does not make it real. The military community evaluates capabilities, not speeches, and the capability simply does not exist in any reliable form. Skyfall remains mostly a theoretical idea and a failed prototype. To understand why nobody is scared, it helps to imagine what a functioning nuclear-powered cruise missile would require. It would need to fly consistently, safely, and predictably with a stable reactor. It would need to undergo dozens of successful tests. It would need to show clear advantages over existing systems. It would need to be deployable, controllable, and strategically useful. None of those conditions are met. Instead, every piece of evidence suggests a project struggling with physics, engineering, and real-world hazards. The world is not dismissive because it underestimates Russia, but because the facts speak for themselves. Fear requires credibility, and Skyfall has yet to demonstrate any. Russia's functional nuclear arsenal already provides all the deterrence it needs. The addition of an unreliable experimental system does not change that equation in the slightest. In the end, Skyfall stands more as a symbol than a weapon, a symbol of ambition, of propaganda, and of the desire to appear technologically superior. But symbols do not deter militaries. Operational, proven systems do, and the global military community continues to see Skyfall as unproven, unsafe, and largely impractical. That's why nobody is scared, not because the idea isn't bold, not because nuclear power isn't powerful, but because real-world conditions, scientific limitations, and repeated failures have stripped the missile of credibility. Instead of provoking fear, Skyfall provokes skepticism. Instead of signaling Russian strength, it highlights Russian struggle. Instead of reshaping global strategy, it remains a footnote in the ongoing story of experimental weapons. The conversation around this missile ultimately reminds us of something important. Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. Until such evidence appears, Skyfall will continue to be regarded not as a threat, but as a technological gamble that has yet to pay off. And that wraps up our breakdown of why nobody is scared of Russia's nuclear-powered Skyfall missile. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more deep dives into global technology, defense issues, and the stories behind the headlines.